Howdy guys, thanks for watching. Landing technique is always a hot topic with pilots, so I'm going to walk through a handful of them in this video. I do a fair amount of backcountry flying, so my normal flying mission is to use the slowest speed possible in the pattern and during the approach and least amount of runway. These airstrips are often in confined areas, such as at the bottom of narrow valleys. Maneuvering in such areas requires reduced airspeed due to the reduced turn radius that's necessary. The strips are usually plenty long, but often the full length is not usable for me in the RV4 due to rough or moist sections. So using minimal runway is an important goal for me. Not everyone has the same mission, and that's okay. Note that I use knots rather than mile per hour. However, my GoPro will only display miles per hour. Apologies for the confusion this will surely cause. In my typical landing configuration, my airplane stalls at 42 knots indicated airspeed. This is VS0 with full flaps. This results in a 1.3 VSO approach speed of 55 knots. The RV4 has a fair amount of energy at landing. You can reduce power to idle when the runway is made and the aircraft continues flying pretty much as it was, compared to a Cub type airplane that will immediately slow and sink when power is reduced. Mastering this energy is one of the keys to using minimal runway length with the RV4. In the first three landings, I'm using the top edge of the runway number as my aim point. Touching down on or after the aim point is good. Touching down before the aim point is bad. In the wild, doing so means ripping the gear off your airplane because you hit the dirt ditch, or the trees or the rocks, and maybe even winding up dead. On this particular day, density altitude was about 4,000 feet MSL, and the wind was light and variable. For the first landing, we're going to make a normal approach, so I'm using 55 knots, indicated airspeed. I'll be slowing as I approach the aim point and shooting for a touchdown speed of 44 to 46 knots. As you can see, it's a pretty stable approach. So there's the flare, and we're slowing down, and there's the touchdown. I use medium braking on all landings to build that muscle memory. And in this case, about 850 feet was used from the aim point. Now my standard departure is, again, considering a backcountry airstrip scenario, and I accelerate to takeoff speed and then make an initial climb of a couple hundred feet at 60 knots to clear trees and obstructions. Now for landing number 2, I've set up a high approach. And since we're using full flaps, the best way to increase the sink rate is to slow down. So in this case, I'm using 50 knots indicated airspeed. And this sets up a significantly higher rate of descent, so you'll see the prop spin up just before touchdown to decrease that sink rate that's been built up. And in this case, we touch down about 48 knots. And I missed the aim point fairly significantly, 300 to 400 feet. So for this landing, we used about 1,000 feet from the aim point to our stopping point. Now this is not my backcountry setting for my propeller, which would be a fine pitch. This is my just kind of my general It's pin number 5 for those that have a Cincinnati GA propeller. It's my normal day-to-day setting. Now for landing number 3, it's back to just a normal landing using 55 knots. Indicated airspeed is the approach. And again, aiming for just the top edge of the runway number. And in that case, I landed about 150 feet past the aim point, and I got stopped about 150 feet from the aim point. Now for landing number 4, we're going to mix things up a bit. I've moved the aim point far down the runway to reduce the length of my taxi back to the hangar, but also to mix things up. Pilots practice things exactly the same way each time, and when things are out of the ordinary, a strange airport or a backcountry airstrip, some of those pilots become very uncomfortable. I believe that adding variety to our routine makes for a better pilot that is able to adjust for conditions and variables. The example here might be that the first several hundred feet of the airstrip are unusually rough and unusable. So here I'm using the first crossing runway as my aim point, the beginning of that crossing runway, and I set up a high approach, so I'm approaching at 50 knots indicated airspeed to increase the rated descent. And you'll see as we get down to about 50 feet and approaching the flare, the power will come in to arrest that rated descent. And we touch down at about 46 knots. Hope you found all of that interesting and useful in your flying. Thank you for watching, and please leave a like.